Can I get a yeah? Yeah. Today we are here to celebrate one of the beloved, one of the fallen, the greatest thing in the city, which is the New York City Metro card.
So if you're living in New York City, you might have heard that the MTA has announced that by the end of 2025, they'll no longer be using Metro cards. It is one of a few major changes that are coming to New York City's transit systems, which has been seeing increased vigilance and attention since the start of the pandemic in 2020. I always loved seeing how public transportation was depicted in animation, especially because it was something that I had various experiences with in real life. And those experiences have changed over time, as has the MTA, although sometimes I start to wonder whether some of those things are changes or if I'm just becoming a little more sentient. As a kid, I definitely felt like I had some kind of shared experiences with these characters solely based off of seeing them take public transportation. If your TikTok algorithm has ever blessed you with any of those New York Isn't Real videos, specifically the ones based on the trains, I know you might think this is a wild sentiment, but listen, when I saw the train on Courage the Cowardly Dog, I felt seen. So if it wasn't already clear, I live in New York City, and for the majority of my life, I was a daily MTA rider. The MTA is the largest public transit authority in the United States, with its coverage spreading over the 5 boroughs of New York and reaching all the way out to Long Island and certain areas in Connecticut. With a commuter rail, the massive subway system, and a similarly large network of buses, the MTA serves close to 6 million riders daily, with over half of those riders being subway takers. Now, these numbers were reportedly down since the pandemic, which became a very critical touch point, and it inspired a lot of the changes that we'll be seeing to the subway in the next few years. However, as hard as it might be to believe, ridership isn't the only issue that these new transportation reforms are looking to address. Now, I still take the MTA regularly, but not nearly as often or as far as I did in my younger years. I've been stuck in train traffic for hours, I've seen dance battles, stabbings, human feces, and probably thousands of subway rats, the whole shebang. I have my fair share of complaints like anyone else, but the train has still been an impactful feature in my life. Now, if you feel similar to me, then strap in as we take a look at some of my favorite subway features in Western animation.
I'm sorry to disturb your pleasant ride, but unlike yourselves, I was born without taste buds.
Are you sure this is the fastest way to Grand Central Station?
So this episode kicks off when Arnold and his friends are disappointedly coming out of the theater after watching a movie that they thought would have been better. I went and saw Highest to Lowest this year, so I left exactly like that. After they're done talking about how much the movie sucked, Helga points out that it's getting late, and of course, like so many of us have heard before, the goal was always to be home before the streetlights came on. And as they stood in front of the theater, it became very clear that they were way too late for that. After they missed the last bus, Arnold suggested that they take the subway, but as soon as he said it, you can tell that they were not feeling it. Helga says she's not going down there because she's afraid of rats, and Gerald, rightfully so, was afraid of anything that would be waiting below ground.
What they say about taking the subway after dark? Sun goes down, stay above ground. I ain't scared of no subway, ain't scared of nothing.
Nope, no subway for me. Not no way, not no how.
Arnold and the crew eventually go down to the subway station, but before that, Arnold stops for a second to call his grandma and let her know that they're taking the train home. Then, as soon as Arnold gets off the phone, Gerald hurries him and the rest of the crew to get on the train that's pulling into the station. It's not until they're all on board that Gerald notices that they were supposed to take the F instead of the D train, and the kids panic again. But I think Gerald does enough to calm them down when he lets them know that all they have to do is ride the train back and then make the switch. And trust me, there is nothing more frustrating than realizing you're taking a train headed in the wrong direction and the surrounding stations don't have some kind of pathway for you to get to the other side of the tracks. After they calm down, we meet the rest of the passengers that are riding with them on this train.
I'm an upside down fireman.
Get off that pole, fat boy. I'll see you, my time.
Yes, doctor. Big, open spaces.
So there's this unhoused guy, a psychologist with a patient who's making some very, very uncomfortable noises. And then there's a blind man with his seeing eye dog. Now this is when a rat bites through the subway's power line, and it not only causes the train to stop, but the light on the train goes out as well. When the train originally stops, it wasn't a big concern, but I think the collective anxiety gets turned up a little bit when the conductor comes in on the intercom.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain calm. There is no need to worry. Even though thousands of pounds of water are bearing down as we speak on the thin, aging walls of this government-funded tunnel, you are in no danger. Passengers, it may just be a matter of minutes or hours or days or weeks till the search and rescue team finds our forgotten and stranded
So,
subway
as for my initial thoughts on rewatching this episode, I've been stuck in train traffic more times than I could probably count. While the majority of stints don't stick out in my mind as significant memories, there are a few that have definitely left me with a lot to think about as I got off the train. Number one on those lists I usually end up thinking is why. I never really understood what it meant for there to be train traffic until one day I heard two women talking about the train traffic we were stuck in. What she ended up explaining to me and pretty much everyone else on that train car was the concept of fixed block signaling.
On a fixed block signaling system, the railroad is divided into blocks to keep trains a safe distance apart. Blocks are electrically distinct segments of the line and can vary in length depending on the speed limit and geometry of the segment. When a train is detected in any part of the block, that block is considered occupied. The signaling system thus keeps the train behind it at a safe distance by prohibiting movement into an occupied or buffer block. This safe distance is enforced by stop arms, which can activate the brakes of a train if it tries to move into one of these blocks.
So it's not exactly like a rat eating a power line, but similarly frustrating. While blaming it on the rodents does seem convenient and like it could be possible, New York City trains in particular are not powered by those streetcar-esque power cables. Rather, they get all their juice through a high voltage rail alongside the train tracks, colloquially known as the third rail. I'm actually of the belief that the power system used here in this episode of Hey Arnold is more of a nod to the light rail system in Seattle. The fixed box signaling system and the third rail power supply was how the trains were originally set up to function in 1950s in New York, and it's still the way that most trains function and are monitored when moving along their routes. When compared to similarly sized transit systems around the world, New York's subway system is one of the more delayed and dysfunctional systems, but the train has been moving significantly better over the last year. Some of these trains and stations are so old that they make taking the train at best an unsightly experience, and at worst, you're stuck in train traffic with no service. We're getting close to being a decade out from former Governor Andrew Cuomo declaring the subways to be in a state of emergency after several track fires and a train derailing seriously injured dozens of people over the course of the summer of 2017. I'm recording this before November 4th, so I'm really hoping that this doesn't age poorly. Now in 2025, one of the major updates we're getting closer to seeing in New York is the trains being updated with an automated block system that would help cut down on a lot of those times where the monitoring systems malfunction or things are delayed because of the errors to the system. I'm a little skeptical and biased as to how they're deciding where we'll see these new trains in the future. I have my hypothesis, but I'll keep that to myself for now. Who knows, maybe we'll see one of these futuristic trains on the 6th line next. The automation process is a project that started in 2015, but was really accelerated after the 2017 crisis declaration spawned a massive transit overhaul plan. We only have about 2 or 3 lines that are currently fitted with these new trains and new systems, but hey, at least they work, I think. Now, taking a step back into Hey Arnold, the episode escalates by having the passengers and kids slowly push towards their breaking point. People are hungry, anxious, and hella nervous because the conductor keeps going on the intercom and just bugging out. But the pressure is broken once the blind passenger seeing iDog goes into labor and gives birth to her litter.
Something wrong with this dog.
Is he sick?
What is the matter?
Somebody get me a newspaper. Killer's alright, but I think he's a she.
The episode concludes by having the group sing We Shall Overcome as they wait for rescue in the form of Grandma Gertie. You know, I've personally never understood those weird miracle birth resolutions to stories. I don't know where that trope came from, or how that solves anyone's issues, or makes anyone feel better. If anything, I think I would just be thinking about the smell, cause damn. Now, before we move on, there are 2 other episodes that feature the subway systems in Hey Arnold. One in season 3, episode 11, titled Oscar Can't Read, and the other coming in season 4, episode 13, Buses, Bikes, and Subways. Both of these episodes just minorly feature the train systems. They kind of serve as a stumbling block for the main characters as they try to find their ways home.
I guess we get off at Lexington. No, we get off at Lincoln. I took this train with my dad
and Oscar can't read, it's discovered that Oscar, one of the other tenants in Arnold's buildings, actually can't read. Arnold volunteers to teach him, and they go to great lengths to get it done, but because of the shame and discomfort Oscar felt, he ends up just faking his progress. By the end of the episode, Arnold's final test for Oscar is to take the subway home, which navigating that was already a tough ask, but added on top of that was the fact that Oscar still couldn't read.
If I can read Pet the Kitty, I can read the street signs, right? Come on, let's go home.
Buses, bikes, and subways starts off with Arnold's class on a school trip. Harold and Helga end up getting paired together in the buddy system, which pretty much screws them both. When it's time to leave, Helga ends up going back to look for Harold, but by the time she finds him, they're way too late to catch the school bus back. Instead, they try to get themselves home on foot, but neither of them really know where they're going. They spend the whole afternoon into the evening arguing and nearly escaping trouble, but it turns out that Harold knows how to get to the local arena where a wrestling event is happening live. Also, shout out to my man's Harold with the fare evasion, man.
There's only one little problem. It costs money to take the subway and we don't have any.
Then we'll just jump the gate. No one ever gets caught. Come on.
Hey, you two kids! Come back here!
We have to change trains here at Grand Central.
This is gonna be our point a restaurant? Don't you want to go?
Of course I do.
Wow. Is that Manhattan Island? You changed everything. Really? But you haven't seen the kitchen yet.
My friend Eric Goldstein.
What if Buster thinks I'm boring?
Just on this side of Central Park.
It's just nice to be back with my friends again.
One of the most memorable moments on PBS Kids for me was Season 8, Episode 6 of Arthur, titled Postcards from Buster, also known as the backdoor pilot for the spin-off series Postcards from Buster. This is the only TVY show on this list, primarily because I have a personal love for the show and this episode. There is a solid amount of cartoons aimed at preschool-aged kids that featured episodes about taking public transportation, and I decided to exclude the majority of them from this list. Caillou almost snuck in there, but I had to sit him down. The episode starts off with Arthur and DW eavesdropping on their mom on the phone with Buster's mom. It turns out that Arthur and the Reed family will be joining Buster on his trip to New York to see his dad. Arthur and DW are excited to go on a trip to New York, but as we get to see later, Buster isn't too fond of his upcoming trip. Buster's father is a pilot, and as a result of that, he doesn't get to see him too often. Add on top of that, the fact that Buster's parents were divorced, and through that, the show plays with some of the mixed emotions that can be difficult for a child in this situation.
Did she really miss you the last time you went away with your dad?
Yeah, she did. Maybe I just won't go.
As one of the pillars of the golden era of preschool cartoons, Arthur did a really good job at laying the groundwork for more emotionally resonant storytelling in kids animation. This is the first cartoon that I can cognitively recall displaying a separated family, and the series sought out ways to develop Buster and its other characters through that subject. The first half of this episode deals with Buster struggling to handle feeling as though he's abandoning his mother to spend time with his father. At first, he tries to spend more time cleaning up and being less of a burden while he still has time with his mom, and when that doesn't work, he resorts to acting out and making a mess to try and piss his mom off so she doesn't feel as hurt about him leaving. Of course, that doesn't work, and instead, the series shows a very sincere heart-to-heart between Buster and his mom that culminates with this scene at the airport.
I bet she's gonna need these. Tissue?
It's just a bit of dust, sweetie. We have to say goodbye here. Would you like to leave those with me?
No. I think I'll need them.
We still have to get to the travel aspect of this episode, but one thing that I love is that this isn't the only time Buster's family dynamics have been a relevant factor to Buster's role in the story. In Season 2, the series had an episode titled Arthur's Faraway Friend, which was based around Buster leaving for a trip with his dad, but this time they would be flying around the world. After that episode around the halfway point of Season 2 until the first episode of Season 3, Buster was not a part of the series. And when he returns at the start of Season 3, they have 2 episodes that unpack a lot of the emotions around Buster leaving. And now, 5 seasons later, Buster's getting ready for another trip with his dad. I say another, I think there's a little bit of debate around the continuity of Arthur, but we're not gonna go there. Also, since we kind of making side notes, I don't know where to put this, but why did they have to switch out Buster's dad like that? Getting back to this episode, once they arrive in the city, Buster lets Arthur know that his dad is supposed to be meeting up with the band later today, and he asks Arthur if he wants to tag along. Arthur, Buster, and Buster's dad travel across New York looking for a specific place called The Point. But after they start their look in Chinatown, their rental car gets towed and they pretty much have to take the train from there on out. They go all the way from Chinatown to the Bronx, which is wild to see. Now, Arthur is inherently educational because after the Children's TV Act was passed by Congress in 1990, all children's cartoons were forced to be. While Arthur wasn't teaching you empirical facts or turning you into a CSI agent like Blue's Clues, it focused heavily on developing social skills to help kids better understand the world. It gave kids the language and some of the visual information that they need to understand unfamiliar experiences. And by giving kids those tools, it helps them form the connections in their brain that can lead to newer and more expansive ideas. And I think taking kids all around New York in the second half of this episode is one of the ways that they try to be expansive. I feel like this did such a good job even rewatching it as an adult representing New York and its multicultural neighborhoods. The first thing I want to point out that I feel like was really important for me was Arthur and Co. consistently showing the map of New York and having it be as accurate as it needs to be with the neighborhood's names and pictures.
We started up there in Times Square, and now we're here in Chinatown.
I think the restaurant is down one of these side streets.
Even though the train scene itself ended up being pretty short, it still felt very true to what it was like to get on the train and ride around Manhattan. 90% of the trains in the subway system go through Manhattan at some point, but I still think it's important to feature other boroughs like the Bronx to emphasize one, that the other boroughs exist, and two, to showcase their uniqueness. It actually surprised me in my adult life how many blank stares I've received when I tell people outside of New York that I'm from the Bronx. Of course, they made sure to feature these breakdancer performers at 42nd Street and teach kids how to do the wave. And just as a note, I think it's pretty cool that they're showing kids taking the train and having to transfer and even make sure to keep track of where they're transferring to. From the looks of it, they probably took the Q to Times Square and then transferred to the 6th line, and then that's what ends up letting them out at 116th. It's beautiful. And of course, your MTA experience isn't complete until you run into an issue with your train going out of service.
I can't believe our train was taken out of service.
I know. It feels like we're never gonna have lunch.
So yeah, that was pretty much the episode. It was one of the first times I had ever heard the Bronx mentioned in a cartoon, so I was definitely astonished as a kid. But I definitely do want to make it clear, you probably don't want to just pop up walking around the point like that. That could end pretty bad, or good, depending on what you're looking for.
Don't worry, we'll have a big lunch with Los Viajeros at the Point.
Is the Point a restaurant?
Actually, I'm not sure.
We're almost there. Right there is the Point. Welcome to the Point.
Are you kidding? If we hadn't gotten lost, I wouldn't have seen so much of New York. I really feel like I'm starting to get to know this place.
Me too. Dad, over here. This train will take us back to the States.
Cricket! This way, Tilly!
Come in, Papa. Whee!
Now, for contrast, the episode that I want to talk about is Big City Green's episode, Steak Night. It's the second episode of the series overall, and it's one of the first episodes that I ever saw of the series. Big City Greens is one of my favorite cartoons of the last few years, and it's definitely one of my favorite TVY7 cartoons that is still airing. If you haven't seen it, the simple synopsis is a series that shows the daily lives of the Green family, a family of farmers who have relocated from their simple farm to a modern metropolitan big city. It's very sweet and lighthearted, but it strikes that sense of 2000 sense of stupidity masterfully. It feels very Simpsons, Chowder, SpongeBob-esque, and I like that. So in this episode, our main character, Cricket Green, and the rest of his family are coming home from their grocery trip for their annual family steak night. As they're on their way to get home, they realize that it's getting late, and to make sure that they get home on time to cook the steak dinner, they decide to take the subway. Now, before they get on the subway, Cricket asks his dad, Bill, to let him hold the package of steak that they spent a considerable amount of money on. When they go down into the subway, they are completely surprised and overwhelmed with the amount of life going on in the station. It was actually pretty interesting seeing the mass crowds of people moving in sync with one another. I also really appreciate how this episode takes a bit of time to illustrate some of the intrigue and, I guess, culture that goes on in these key transfer stations. I'm not sure how hubs like this work in other major cities, but in New York, Times Square, Grand Central Station, Columbus Circle, World Trade, Fulton Street, and a bevy of other train stations have a lot going on. And I think it's really cool that Big City Green shows an example of this in a way that highlights or plays up the wonder of it all, especially for someone's first time. That being said, in the midst of all these interesting things going on, Cricket nearly misses his train, but once he gets on the train, he realizes that he's left the stakes behind. So now, in his effort to get the stakes back, Cricket gets off at the next station and tries to take the train back to the previous station. And to make matters worse, as the rest of the Greens chase Cricket off the train, they end up losing many more of their other groceries. When they finally reach the train to get back down the line, the train ends up being stopped due to a mysterious package that was found at the previous station.
Your attention please. Due to a suspicious package left at 5th Street Station, this train has been delayed indefinitely.
Watching this episode makes me think of all the times I did and didn't report something on the train. I can definitely say that the most egregious things I've seen, I've always made an effort to alert someone at the station. I'm not sure when's the last time I've seen one, but if you're on the trains in New York, you more than likely will notice a few signs with the slogan, "If you see something, say something." I think by now they might have changed some of that wording, but I'm not sure. That saying in particular became popularized through a national campaign by Homeland Security to raise awareness around the signs of terrorism and terrorism-related crimes after the events of September 11th. And since the launch of that campaign, a number of events have taken place in which terroristic attacks were thwarted based on the vigilance of passersby. The saying was quickly distorted and endorsed by the New York State government as well, and utilized as a very visible slogan of the New York City Transit Safety Committee. Safety on the New York City trains is a dicey subject. Again, if your TikTok algorithm knows what's up, you probably know where I'm coming from. While there has been reported cases of suspicious activities on the train that the See Something, Say Something campaign has helped mitigate, the truth is the state of hypervigilance New York City has stirred up in the day-to-day commuter does not relate to the threat of violence New Yorkers face when getting on the trains on a daily basis. It's hard to contextualize this past anecdotal experiences, but I do think it's important to add the context of when and where crimes happen on the trains. It's a lot more likely for something that would be interpreted as a terror attack to happen at 42nd Street, but if something happens on Dyer Avenue or on DeKalb, you're lucky if there's a functioning camera, let alone an officer or an attendant to help you. Bomb threats and attacks have been sensationalized and politicized on a massive scale in the US, and specifically in New York. So those in charge in New York use this to justify the amount of resources spent quote-unquote addressing it and further militarizing the city. In other major cities, transit safety doesn't seem to make big news as often, though it's definitely been a talking point in places like Philly, Chicago, and Los Angeles. Cities like LA have only really recorded one bomb threat over the last 20 years on their transit system, and Philly, which has had more than their fair share of scares, the latest actual explosive recovery dates back to 2001. Back to the episode, we see a bomb squad similar to the public safety bomb technicians cities like New York and Philadelphia have co-opted into their transit safety teams. At the end of the day, the Greens don't really get to enjoy their steak night, but I guess it's the thought that counts.
Steak night isn't about the steaks. It's about family. We can afford to buy more steaks. We can't afford to buy another Cricket.
I've tried.
Before we head out, I want to throw in some honorable mentions. I wanted to give a special shout out to Disney Pixar's Soul, an amazing film that is maybe not exactly underrated, but definitely missed out on the impact that it could have had. If you haven't seen Soul already, I would suggest just stop this video right now and go watch it. The film does an amazing job tackling the all-consuming nature of pursuing passions and displays how quickly a quest for accomplishment and signifiers to validate yourself can become a vacuum. What's the use of accomplishments if they leave you missing out on the parts of life that are the most important? The movie really focuses on how being in the present is necessary for the fulfillment and joy that you're looking for in your output. And throughout the film, the story briefly uses this train scene to visually represent that.
Whoa!
Hey, take it easy, eh?
I'm sorry.
Don't worry about it. It's the subway. It does that to some people.
Does what?
It wears you down. It stinks. It's hot. It's crowded. Every day the same thing, day in and day out.
This scene, and really just that sentence, resonated with me when I watched that for the first time. It pointed out that collective need to disassociate as a method of getting through the day-to-day stresses of life. Everyone's on edge, staring at their phones in deep thought about whatever issue they've got waiting for them at home, or actively trying not to think about that. It was especially poignant to me because I can definitely say that I felt that need the strongest on a 2-hour commute home. I thought prefacing Joe's line on the train with the performer singing at the station really set the base for interpreting that scene and highlighting that the difference would largely deal with perspective.
He's good. I've heard music before, but I've never felt like this inside.
I don't know. All the times I've been so close to getting to my dreams, something always gets in the way. You know what I mean?
Shout out to Madagascar, that is actually 59th Street Station and actually Grand Central Station. It still blows my mind that they recreated that and put that in a kids movie. Crazy.
You've been ratted out, boys. Cute and cuddly, boys. Cute and cuddly.
Let me know if you guys have any other episodes or scenes like these that you remember specifically feeling that level of like representation, or even just seeing characters do stuff that you did in your everyday life. Hopefully I'll be back to talk to you guys with a new video kinda soon, but until then, peace.